Hello, and welcome to the 6th JCLP President's Forum. I'm Marcia Storch, a member of the JCLP board. I know some of the pressures you face. I'm the former president of Temple Shir Shalom in Gainesville, Florida, and my previous congregation, Temple B'nai Israel in Olean, New York, had a declining membership. JCLP helped us to make a plan, sell our building, and continue in a smaller setting. Tonight is about fundraising. It's too bad we can't pay our bills with spiritual shekels, like manna from heaven. No, we need U.S. dollars, raised from dues, appeals, special events, and capital campaigns. Fortunately, we have 4 successful fundraisers here to share some tricks of the trade. Jody Goldsmith from Congregation Knesset Israel in Annapolis, Maryland. Carol Ostrow from the Actors Temple in New York City. Peggy Green from Congregation Beth Jacob in Galveston, Texas. And Richard Gaddle from Hebrew Union Congregation in Greenville, Mississippi. After their presentations, we'll take your questions, and we want to hear about your fundraising experiences. Feel free to post questions and comments in the chat. Now let's get started. First, with an overview of revenue sources you can tap, then 3 specific case studies.
Good evening. I'm Jody Goldsmith, the president of Congregation Knesset Israel in Annapolis, Maryland. And I've been president for the last 4+ years. And I was also president in 2011, 2012. And we're going to talk a little bit about our fundraising efforts. Hopefully this will help you in your efforts. So why is this so important to us? Because it's very important that we keep some form of traditional Judaism alive and well in Annapolis for the foreseeable future. We have a Reform congregation, a kind of left-wing conservative congregation. We're more the traditional side. And it's very important that we can prosper, not just as a Jewish community, but also prosper in this very ethnically diverse community in this tourist town that all of us love. So it's first a little bit about our history and our description. We were chartered in 1906, so we're almost 120 years old. We moved to our present building from a church back in 1962, and it's a beautiful 60s era architecture. And the sanctuary is quite large. It seats 416. The auditorium fits 700+ people. We have a fantastic industrial kitchen, and we have a separate school wing. And we had a Jewish day school, which started about almost 40 years ago and built a separate building 11 years ago. And unfortunately, the school has since failed, so now that's reverted to us. Our membership went from a peak of 486 in the 70s when my wife and I moved here in the late 80s. It was about 350, and we're now down to 100. We've gone from being pretty much Orthodox, traditional type synagogue to what I call conservadox. Not necessarily conservative or not in the conservative movement, but certainly we're definitely not Orthodox. We're egalitarian for one thing. We did try merging twice so far, and maybe third time will be a charm, we'll see. And it is critical to us, though, that we preserve our history as a Jewish community and as a way of life in this small but wonderful and vibrant community. So annually, what do? We have an appeal that, as president, it's my responsibility to make that appeal, and we raise every year about $20,000 from that. Seat donations, it used to be called seat sales, but we changed that, didn't like that notation, so we call it seat donations, and that raises about $15,000 a year. Our Yitzker book, where we keep the tally of the living relatives to make sure we can continue to collect. A beautiful Yitzker book we use 4 times a year when we say Yitzker, is we raise about $8,000. our high holiday honors, which we really need to be a little bit more aggressive about, but we raised about $3,500. And lastly, our yard sites all during the year, we raised $13,000. Now, what's not listed here is, of course, we have dues, and we do not have voluntary dues. We have a standard, relatively inexpensive amount of only $1,000 a person. So my wife and I pay $2,000 in dues. And so we raise about $97,000 a year from that. And we do have a few members, full members, whose dues are forgiven. Now, going to special fundraising efforts. This is rare, and the only reason it's rare is because we're now so small. It's a tremendous amount of effort to put on these events. This last October, I had the idea to do this to honor our congregants of the year, which started, the planning of that started back in the spring of 2023. It netted $23,000. We're very happy about that. We had 3 years worth of honorees, which totaled 6 people, but it was an immense effort. And I really just do not see that happening again within at least the next couple of years. As far as fundraising efforts for the building, first one, we have to mention silver lining to everything. The pandemic, we got in $50,000 from our efforts of applying to the government for help there. So $50,000 is a decent chunk of change. Our endowment trust, we have about a $760,000 endowment trust, where we get 4% a year. It's about $30,000 a year. Our building fund, which we do not aggressively go out, but every now and then people put in a donation to the building fund. So we have that separate line, and that's about $3,000. We have been very, very successful in applying for and getting grants, security grants for our building, where we have done many, many security upgrades to our campus. And lastly, $1,500 we get from Giant, is one of our major supermarket chains, and that's where you prepay for credit cards, and the synagogue gets a percentage of that. And now the last project I'm going to talk about, the last effort I'm going to talk about, is our cemetery beautification effort. And this was a situation where a couple of years ago, we had a truck drive from across the street, presumably as a drunk driver, because they never caught him, drive right through our wall, spin around, and drive right out. They did not get close to any of the stones, so nothing was damaged there, just the wall and the little bit of the lawn. So as you see my expression there, making lemonade from lemons, people wanted to immediately repair the wall, and I said, no, we're not repairing the wall. We're going to upgrade, beautify the cemetery. And I'm a retired Army guy, so to give you the perspective, I said to people, we should be like the Arlington National Cemetery in Annapolis. I started calling us, we should be at the Arlington Jewish Cemetery of Annapolis. So what we did was we appealed to the living relatives of all those who were deceased and buried in our cemetery, and to others. We had 2 very, very reputable members of the synagogue in charge of the letter campaign to try to raise these funds. And what we did was we did three appeals, and we kept showing right from the beginning. We showed the plans of what we intend to do for the beautification, and we kept on showing our progress. We've been very successful. Our initial target was 300,000, and we're close. So we think in the long run we'll make it. And that's been very successful, as you can see from the pictures. So now you see that I've talked to you about 4 fundraising efforts, 4 directions that we take. And it is critical that we continue to do this effort so that we move forward for our future generations to tomorrow and beyond. And maybe the merger will help us if we can make it happen, quite frankly, for a number of reasons, primarily dealing with the building. We're not optimistic it's going to happen. So we just do what we can to make sure that we go into the future, though, however we can. So I hope this helps you with your fundraising efforts, and I look forward to answering your questions a little later. Thank you very much.
Hi, I'm Carol Ostro, and I'm the proud president of Temple Ezrath Israel, better known as the Actors Temple. We're in New York City, in the heart of Broadway, in the middle of the city. And we have a very colorful history dating back 107 years. But I'll get to that in just a minute. Have patience. For now, what I want you to know is that when I joined the board 11 years ago, we didn't know how we were going to pay our bills, and we didn't know exactly what to do about it. A lot of members were leaving, and our once grand and magnificent synagogue, which I call a jewel of a shul, is a national landmark that was built in 1923, and it was falling to pieces. The fire escape was held together with rust. The basement was flooded. And because we had a leaky roof during Yom Kippur services, part of the ceiling fell down. So Rabbi Jill Hausman just cleared away the people in that area, and she continued on with the service. She's a pro. As board president for the last 10 years, and I can't believe it's 10 years, I had to figure out how to bring in much needed revenue. What I know best is show business in the entertainment industry. I started dance lessons when I was 2 years old because my mother was a dancer and she wanted me to be graceful. I was crowned Miss Brooklyn when my mother entered me in the pageant when I was 5 years old. At 17, I was a Las Vegas showgirl and also a dancer in the chorus. Now, over the course of my career, I learned choreography, acting, directing, producing. So I know about how to bring people together and let's put on a show. So that's what I did. I produced shows to raise money and attract new members. It was a natural fit given our history. Early members were those actors and comedians from Eastern Europe, as well as agents, managers, choreographers. How about Rodgers and Hammerstein? Yes. They were not welcome in New York's more established synagogues because they were entertainers and they were not considered respectable. And they were poor. So they formed their own shul and they called it the Actors' Temple. You won't believe the history of those actors who were members or raised money for us. How about Al Jolson, Sophie Tucker, Edward G. Robinson, Jack Benny, who was there all the time for Shabbat, Shelley Winters. But as the entertainment business began to move with the film industry out to Hollywood.
This is the night that Hollywood holds the world spotlight.
We began a slow and unfortunately a steady decline. In 2006, we were down to about a dozen members. But today, we have recovered from COVID and we have about 120 families. Tequila. It's very eclectic. We welcome everybody, not just the acting community. We do not have wealthy donors, as so many other very famous synagogues here in New York have. We don't have 5 and 10 million and more donors. So we raise money incrementally. Our special events bring in between 20 and I would say 30% of our $160,000 budget. I mean, it's fair to say that New York has a unique talent pool, of course. And yes, we leverage our connections. For example, we landed performers like Jason Alexander, you remember from Seinfeld? Well, there is talent in every community, and you need to remember that. You can find talent at a dance school, a drama school, a high school that's putting on a play. You can put on perhaps one act from that. You can find someone who's written a book or even a play and use that as a show. Many of our events are variety shows with the segments last about 7, I would say, to 8 minutes for an hour-and-a-half show. Our recent show was called An Homage to the Visual and the Performing Arts. And I had local actors doing their monologues, including a quite well-known actor here in New York called Jim Brochu, who wrote a one-man show called Zero about Zero Mostel. I had a ballerina from a dance company that was very diverse. I had artists who were friends of mine. They were painters and some were professional. And I decorated the synagogue like a painting gallery that you would go to anywhere in New York. There is so much talent that's untapped. Our ticket prices range from $25 to $250 for our gala. We typically do 4 shows a year with a few smaller ones in between for the $25. And we try to clear about $10,000 to $15,000 at each one. Sometimes it's as high as $40,000, especially when I honor someone who's on our board or someone who might have passed away, and their family come and they do raise a lot of money for us. I always pay the actors unless they're temple members and they volunteer. When you pay the actors, they show up. If you don't, and they get a better paying gig, they'll call and say, gee, I'm sorry, but I have to make a living. And they do. But generally speaking, actors want to help. And even if they're not Jewish, they know what we're trying to do. I always have a well-designed program, but it's rather expensive. It's about $1,000 to have it printed. But the performers deserve this acknowledgement. I hire professional lighting and sound experts because that's the quality that I want in our show. So with all this expertise, you may be asking, what could go wrong? Well, I can tell you in all honesty, everything. And I have had my panic attacks. One year, our main guest, whom we were honoring, decided he was going to go to an opening of another show that same night. So my next plan B was having the singers in the show just sing one extra song, and they did, and they were happy to do it. When ticket sales lag, I do a time-tested thing called papering the house. I'll call my friends and I'll say, look, you're coming to the show. Please bring some friends. They'll come free, but a donation is always accepted. Even a new sound system has broken down and my heart was in my mouth, but actors know what to do. They project, and it can be even better than you expect. Some final tips. Plan every single detail in the minutia and have a backup plan. Budget carefully. Take out your expenses and the printing and so on, and try to have at least a 50% profit. Food. Well, we always serve something. We don't serve dinners anymore. That's too expensive, but we'll have wine and cheese or wine and dessert. Sometimes we get the wine just given to us free of charge. Rehearse. You must have a rehearsal. What I do is that afternoon of the show, we have a complete run through and everyone knows what they're supposed to do. Thank everyone. I made a terrible mistake one year, tremendous lesson learned. Write their names down, because if you leave someone out, you lose them. Finally, don't be afraid. But even if you are afraid, do it anyway. And remember what George Burns said. In show business, the key word is honesty. And once you know how to fake that, well, by golly, the rest is easy. Thank you for listening.
Hello, my name is Peggy Green. I'm the president of Congregation Beth Jacob in Galveston, Texas, a conservative egalitarian shul. Like many of you, we have a small membership and big buildings that need repairs. One of our buildings dates back to 1931. The other was built in 1963. Galveston is a narrow island in the Gulf of Mexico near Houston. So we face a problem that literally comes with the territory, hurricanes. When Hurricane Ike hit in 2008, floodwater damaged our buildings. Our insurance didn't cover it, and we didn't have enough money for the repairs. Then came Hurricane Harvey in 2017. More damage because our roof had been patched so many times, the patches leaked. This time, the Texas Historical Commission had grant money. We applied for and received $111,000. That all went for the new roof, but there was damage inside. Plaster was falling from the ceilings. The lights, sometimes they worked, sometimes not. Miraculously, we have raised money to preserve our buildings, and I'll tell you how. The story began in 2020. I sent out an end of the year report for our annual meeting. It listed our accomplishments and goals, including badly needed repairs. A short time later, I got a call from a former Galveston resident who was still on our mailing list. Her married name is Rosalind Margolis, but I knew her as one of the Pransky twins. Her father, Harry Pransky, had been a synagogue president. Her grandfather, Max Baum, was one of the founders. Rosalind had seen my end of the year report, and she explained that she and her husband, a successful CPA in Houston, are philanthropists. She asked me straight out, "What do you want? What are you looking for?" The call had just come out of the blue. I didn't know what I wanted, so I asked for her guidance. Rosalind and her husband met with me in Galveston. They were prepared to donate $50,000. Rosalind told her twin sister, Carolyn Rosenthal, about us, and Carolyn and her husband matched the $50,000. We earmarked their gift, $100,000, to repair the sanctuary, which had been unusable for years. It's now called the Baum Pransky Sanctuary. Rosalind's rabbi in Houston is on the JCLP board, and he put us in touch with Noah Levine. Noah recommended that we sell naming rights for other parts of the building. And because we could tout the big sanctuary donation, other congregants were open to giving generously. One of my first calls yielded $18,000, and we now have the Ray and Harry Schreiber Courtyard. That's when I knew I could do it. We got a $50,000 donation for what is now the Bulba Graber Kaplan Chapel. We fixed the termite damage and refurbished everything. With another $50,000, we got rid of the stained carpeting and waterlogged paneling in what is now the Anne and Abraham Post-Matier foyer. In addition to the major gifts, we also got small donations. The grand total for everything, about $400,000, with some donors paying over the next 3 to 5 years. If you're considering a big fundraising campaign, here's some suggestions. Identify personal and professional relationships to figure out who should solicit them. Ask for referrals, so one donor opens the door to others. Communicate. You'll need a letter to announce the campaign, a letter asking to meet prospective donors one-on-one, a thank you letter after the meeting, which spells out the amount pledged, and a thank you after you receive the money. Keep a detailed spreadsheet with the name of the prospects, who is soliciting them, how much you are asking for, the amount pledged, and the amount given. Use email to keep potential donors up to date. They need to know what's been done with the money you have raised. Now, I realize that donors like the Pransky twins rarely materialize out of nowhere. To be honest, I believe there was divine intervention. What else explains it? I know I sound like a Bible thumper, but you'll understand if you're an Elvis Presley fan as I am. Elvis had a hit song in 1957 called "It Is No Secret What God Can Do." In my neck of the woods, the king tells it like it is. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. My name is Richard Daddle. I'm the board president of Hebrew Union Congregation in Greenville, Mississippi, population 30,000. It was chartered in 1880 as a reform congregation. Greenville is part of the Mississippi Delta, which has some of the most fertile land in the country. The Jews came here in the 1800s as peddlers and then merchants from Germany and Eastern Europe. They were accepted and they participated in government, civic, and social affairs. In the 1960s, Hebrew Union Congregation, with 200 families, was the largest synagogue in the state. Growing up in small-town Mississippi, we had a good feeling about being Jewish. We felt secure. That's still true, but times have changed. And our congregation currently has 50 families with a rabbi that comes every other weekend from Jackson, Mississippi. I'm 72 years old, and there are a couple of 69 years olds, and we're among the youngest members. But as sobering as that is, this is a hopeful story. It's a story about the power of intimacy in small-town Jewish life. This is a story of a fundraising success. We raised enough money to ensure that our cemetery is properly maintained forever. Hebrew Union Congregation shares the cemetery with a congregation in Cleveland, Mississippi, about 40 miles away. The cemetery has been here since 1892. It consists of about 15 acres, and we use 5 acres for about 800 grave sites. Our burial plots are inexpensive by big city standards. $3,000 for a 4-person plot. There's a perpetual maintenance fund, and for many years that worked as it was intended. As congregants died, we sold plots, so there was a revenue stream. We pay a local Mennonite family $16,000 a year for upkeep. That covers mowing, trimming the hedges, and raking the leaves, and opening and closing the cemetery gates. About 15 years ago, as our members decreased, it became apparent that we were not going to be able to properly maintain the cemetery. We started to run about $8,000 a year over budget. Hebrew Union and the congregation in Cleveland made up the shortfall from synagogue operating funds. We knew we needed to endow the cemetery, but 15 years ago, we didn't have the right tools to do that fundraising. And I didn't want to do it in a haphazard way. I wanted to do it with a professional backing us, telling us what to do, so we weren't just doing it by the seat of our pants. The first big step forward was tapping into the expertise at the Jewish Community Legacy Project, specifically Noah Levine, who offered a steady hand, wise counsel, and abundant optimism. He had our back. In December 2020, we launched the campaign. With a team of about 10 people, we tracked down addresses for about 80 families that had connections to the cemetery. It was classic Jewish geography. Everybody knew somebody who knew somebody. Our letters and emails requesting a contribution were simple and from the heart. We reminded folks that their loved ones were buried here and that they represented the rich history of Jews in the Mississippi Delta. We followed up with phone calls. I talked to people that I hadn't talked to in 50 years. It wasn't awkward because we all grew up with each other. We had a sense of how much each family would give. Sometimes we got it right. Sometimes there were surprises, both good and bad. Overall, the results were astonishing. From local folks and from families in New York, Boston, Seattle, and Beverly Hills. The response rate was virtually 100%. Everyone we asked gave. Donations ranged from $50 to $50,000. Most were around $1,000. One of the most inspiring aspects of our campaign was the issue of donor recognition. We've all seen major fundraisers where donors are categorized platinum donors, gold patrons, etc., etc. We didn't do it that way. There was no donor recognition and no publication of names. There was none of that because we didn't need it. People knew this had to be done. We raised $534,000 and we have $93,000 more in outstanding pledges. You can do it too, and I'll offer these tips. Look at your cemetery records now and start gathering names. Facebook makes it easier than ever. Not everyone is comfortable asking for money. Use those folks to help with research. And maybe most important, tap into the Jewish Community Legacy Project for guidance. With JCLP's help, we are transferring our cemetery fund to the Jewish Foundation of Memphis. They will invest the money and ensure that the cemetery is properly maintained. It's not the storybook ending that our families envisioned in the 1960s, but under the circumstances, we are reassured that generations of our loved ones will have the dignity and respect they deserve. May their memories be a blessing. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing these case studies. Now we'd like to hear from you. Questions, comments, lessons learned from your experience? Noah Levine from JCLP will read some of the chat comments and call on people for questions.
Shane Asbell from Edmonton, Alberta, would like Carol to speak about how she was able to rejuvenate the Actor Shul from 12 members to over 100 members.
What we did was just try very hard to get in touch with everyone. And as was mentioned, we went to Facebook, we went to friends, we went everywhere we possibly could to tell everybody we were back in business. I made a lot of videos about our history, about the Three Stooges, about the Barry sisters, whom I knew when I was when I was in Las Vegas myself. So we got all the stars that we could together to talk about us. We had PR, and slowly but surely, we got people trickling back in. And now, after having so few, we have about 120 members, and we're trying very hard to keep them. It's very difficult now. It's difficult in New York. We're trying very hard to show everybody that we have protection. We need security. That Friday nights for Shabbat services, we have security people there, actually with a gun, and they can come. They're on Zoom. And I think people feel better now that they come to us in person. And I really object to Zoom because I've spent so much money making the place absolutely gorgeous, and they're not there to enjoy it. But however we can get people in, however we can, we do. And sometimes they just walk in off the street. And we make it very welcoming. Rabbi Jill is terrific. She remembers everybody's name. She makes everyone feel important. And that's how we have grown since COVID. Did I answer the question?
Yes, thank you. Jody was not able to attend this program, but I'm going to ask Richard if he can answer the question about that Karen had asked about how the endowment fund was started and who is it invested with. So Richard, can you talk about that?
Are you specifically asking about the endowment fund for the temple or
The cemetery, and you mentioned about Memphis and how did all that come about?
Okay, specifically for the cemetery, we raised through the years about $230,000, but we knew that wasn't going to be enough to support the upkeep of the cemetery forever. Again, we are dying out. We know we have a certain number of years left in the congregation, so we had to make sure that this was going to continue, particularly since our loved ones were out there. So we raised the 230 over the years, and then recently the endowment fund was raised, as I mentioned, by a letter and an email and calling people. There was no question about any type of tier system where if you gave $5, you got X amount of recognition, or $10 or anything like that. Again, this is for our families, and people saw it that way, so there's no question about that. And as far as the naming goes, it'd be kind of hard to name something out of the cemetery. That would be kind of strange too, to have anything resembling naming out there. Plus, no question about how we went about this. I remember, can't remember which rabbi gave us a list of 10 things that Jews firmly believe in as far as gift giving. And number one on that list was giving anonymously. And that's kind of what we did. And as far as what, who said this? Was it Peggy made a comment about keeping people informed? This was done starting 3 years ago, and we've really yet to send out a letter saying how much money we've raised. They just know that we've done it, and we've done it to the best of our ability. That letter will go out soon, though, as and we're reaching the 600,000 mark right now.
Why did you decide to use a Jewish federation to invest your money and not a bank or an investment company?
Noah forced me to do that. No, we knew that we had to have professional help. I have friends in New Orleans that raised money for Truro Synagogue, and I saw what they were how they were able to raise money using a professional. So I knew if we tried to do it ourselves, it would just flop. We had to have guidance. Noah, you came into being, and maybe it was a God thing. I don't know. How you even came into our, how you came with us, and I just knew it was the right person to help us along. And you guided us throughout the whole process.
We also find that if you're going to invest your money, it's good with a Jewish federation or a foundation because their mission is Jewish continuity. A bank really doesn't really care about the future of the Jewish community.
No, and again, that was handled by somebody else. So I'm really not as familiar with that end of it. I just know that the person from Memphis worked with them and made sure that they would make sure our cemetery was taken care of forever.
Peggy, can you unmute yourself? How did you use your major donors as leverage to get other people to give and to give at a higher level?
I need to think about that because we started out, of course, the Margolises, Carolyn, as well as Rosalind, both of them have been our mentors, and they helped us make a very impressive brochure, but it listed the historical events that had happened since 1931 with the synagogue. So that encouraged the people that they wanted to continue with their parents and their grandparents once they saw that their name had been there. In fact, we just had one man who donated $18,000 for a very small foyer, that because his name was Oshman, and he saw that his grandfather and his grandmother had been there, so he wanted the Oshman name to continue. And I don't know if I'm answering your question, but that encouraged the others to, once they saw the historical names, they wanted to continue. Well, I don't know, and I guess Rosalind is on here, and probably Carolyn too. could answer how many new ones we actually had, because I think the majority of our donors were old timers.
Rosalind, you want to respond?
I think that in the South, we have a big tradition of naming opportunities. I know that our congregation in Houston thrives on it. And it was important for me to feel like I acknowledged their existence in the congregation. And while their names were on plaques with the gold leaves on the wall, there was, and Daddy's picture was up because he was president and so was Grandpa. Aside from that, there was no other recognition, and it made us feel really good to finally name the sanctuary. For all these years, our social hall was named, but not the sanctuary. And so for us to be able to name it after our grandfather and parents felt really, really good.
Thank you, Rosalind.
And others wanted to follow. We established that the larger donations would have the opportunity to do so, and it did bring in the larger dollars.
Yeah.
Thank you. David Post from Salisbury, North Carolina. You wanted to add a brief comment?
I just wanted to follow up on what Richard was saying about, investing with the Jewish Foundation. In North Carolina, we have a foundation that has an arm that is a Jewish foundation. The way our foundation worked, and it's got several $100 million in it, the major foundation has about $4 billion, but they charge us a fee like all foundations do, but to the extent that their fees they charge us exceed their actual costs, they take those dollars and then invest it in our situation into the Jewish community. So that's an advantage. A bank's not going to do that. They're just going to keep their fees. And so these foundations, they run them skinny. They take your money, and whatever is not used to run it gets reinvested it back into Jewish projects. So I would let Noah twist your arm.
Can I ask who you do that with?
Karen, where are you from?
I am from Greenville, North Carolina.
Okay.
And so reflecting on what David just said, I'm
We're
curious sorry?
We're with the Foundation for the Carolinas, which is in Charlotte. But like I said, it's about a $3 to $4 billion fund, but there's the Jewish piece of it. It's run by Phil Warshauer. And like I said, the excess funds, go to get reinvested back into the Jewish community in North Carolina. I can gladly introduce you to him.
Karen, was that your question?
Yes, it was. I want to know where he was located. We live in the eastern part of North Carolina, and we're looking to start an endowment fund. And we're talking with people in Raleigh and Durham, and Federation was changed to the name of Jewish for Good to do investments with them. And they currently invest with a number of synagogues in North Carolina. So I just wanted to see if there was a connection there. Because we feel like we want to have this investment, yes, with a Jewish organization because of what you just said, David. But I think bring it a little bit closer to Raleigh, Durham. We're looking at their organization to do the investment, but maybe we should just talk to the people in Charlotte. We like it in the state because I think that's important.
One of the things that we've done with congregations, and this is good for all of you if you're considering any kind of endowment, legacy endowments or whatever, is that we invite a couple of federations or foundations to make presentations so that you can then make your decision. So Karen, in your situation, you can invite Raleigh Durham, and you can invite Charlotte, you can invite Greensboro too. They'll make a presentation, and then you can make your decision.
Oh, thank you. I didn't realize Greensboro had one as well. Thank you.
Yes. Susan Goldstein, Hickory?
Yes.
This is the North Carolina segment of this program.
Hi. I just wanted to say that my last job was with the Tampa Orlando Pinellas Foundation, and it was an incredible experience. Go with a Jewish foundation, whichever one works for you. I cannot say it strongly enough. There's a difference, and that's all I have to say.
Thank you.
Helene Glasser from Cape Coral, Florida, asked a question, are there professional fundraisers? And I just want to open it up to all of you. Have any of you hired a professional fundraiser to help you with any aspect of your fundraising? Or have you just relied on volunteers? Peggy?
No, we had a professional fundraiser come. He was very well known in Houston. And when we brought him into Galveston, we have found that we raised more money with your suggestions on what we've done, and you're keeping us in line, having us make our list. We have raised more money with you than we've raised with a professional fundraiser. And I really think to the point that he got jealous because he does not attend Beth Jacob anymore. So that was our experience with a professional fundraiser.
Helene, thanks, Peggy. Helene asks a good question, but I think all of you can provide suggestions and advice to each other. So if any of you are successful, if you have an ad journal for an annual and you're pretty successful, then what we'll do is we'll provide you with an opportunity to share that information so that we can share it with everybody. I will say that we did in Atlanta, a lot of you know I worked for the Jewish Federation for 30 years, and years ago, we had a community capital campaign, which was a $55 million campaign. And so we talked to a fundraising company, and they wanted, I don't know, 10% of that, which is kind of like outrageous. And we found that all they were going to do is help organize the books. But when it really comes push to shove, as all of your presenters this evening said, it's you know your prospects. You're the one that solicit, and you're the one that's going to and have the relationship, and you're the one's going to get the results. So I would really think twice about spending money on outside fundraising if you can do it. Now we'll help structure it, but at the end of the day, all of you are going to be the ones that are going to make the campaign. But I can't emphasize enough how important it is for you to, for lack of a better word, rate your congregation of who has the capacity to give a certain amount over what period of time, and then find the right relationships to talk to them. And as we all know, just because somebody says no doesn't mean it's no. It's just I'm not ready to say yes. Okay, Lloyd Perrell from Great Neck. Yes.
Marcia would like to say something. Marcia.
Okay, Marcia, and then we'll go to Lloyd.
Okay. I just wanted to say these are great ideas, but let's take it down a notch, and let's say that you want to have a fundraiser in your congregation, but you don't want just your congregants to be there. You want to open it up to the community to get their money to come in. And it's not an appeal. It's not a capital campaign. I mean, we like to call them friend makers, and but earn a little money on the side there. So it wouldn't be like $50,000, but if we could make a couple of $3,000 on a fundraiser, that would help us along the way. How do we do that? Do we spend it on advertising in our local newspaper, or we usually use Facebook or other social media, flyers? Any suggestions?
does anybody have a response to Marcia? If you're going to do some sort of special event and you want to open up to the community, how do you do it? Carol, unmute yourself.
If you're going to open it up to the community, you go to the community. You get posters and you put it up in local businesses. You call your friends and tell your friends, and they call their friends. You go on social media. Everybody who is part of your show has a follower on Facebook, Instagram, and you can get your PR that way. And just go into the neighborhood, talk about it, and invite everybody you can in the neighborhood and everywhere else. And if you can get a listing in the Jewish press, all the better. They reach everybody, and send out invitations. And I drive everybody crazy because everybody on my email gets an invitation once a week until it's showtime. And you keep at it and keep going.
Richard has a specific question. Lloyd Perrell has a specific question for Richard Dowdle after the program, but it had to do with the rabbi, but it just struck a chord with me. Do your spiritual leaders participate in the fundraising? Do they actually ask for gifts? Do any of you have any suggestions or any experiences with your rabbi or cantor who solicit, or do they sit on the sidelines and it's just basically you lay people doing it? Carol?
Yeah, I was criticized because every Shabbat service I'm there in person, and Rabbi Jill always invites me to come up to speak. And we talk about events that are happening, and I always ask for donations. And so does Rabbi Jill. And I've been criticized for doing that. But since I'm the president and I sign the checks, I feel that's part of my job. I must ask for money. And I helped tremendously also when we asked how are we going to do it. And if anybody is interested, our synagogue is a theater now. It's an off-Broadway theater. And we rent it out to theater companies. We have a theater manager, and we built a school on the 3rd floor for children. So our main income comes from rentals, and also with Rabbi Jill doing weddings, bar mitzvahs, funerals, everything you can think of. We have opened it up to the community and friends to come and use our facilities, and we charge them.
Helene, are you going to respond to whether your cantor fundraises?
Actually, our cantor took over fundraising. We didn't have anybody who wanted to do it. We don't have a congregation with money or a lot of connections. Most of them are elderly, less than half pay full dues. Last year we tried honoring the head of the local hospital, hoping that the doctors would come in and, come to the dinner dance. And we did make money on the journal. We did not make money. Not a whole lot of them contributed. So this year we're trying something different. And actually it was our cantor who connected with the local no-kill animal shelter. And unlike the doctors, they're willing to share their donors. They gave us a mailing list. I can't tell you how it worked because we won't have it until August. But we sent out a letter last week and we've already gotten people sending in ads for our journal. And we're hoping, that we can bring in outside money because we can't keep tapping the same few people that can afford to pay anything.
So you're partnering with another organization and you're going to split the proceeds.
We'll take out the expenses and we'll split not all of the proceeds, but the proceeds from the journal.
Great.
We'll split it 50-50.
Great.
So they have an incentive also to help us because they'll get more money too.
Great. Susan, then Shane.
I have not had the experience here in Hickory because our former rabbi definitely did not want to ask for money. I think that the one we have now coming from New York is more willing to do so. But I will say that in my 13 years as an executive director in synagogues, if the rabbi and or cantor is not participating, you're going to have trouble. It's very important that they are there and show that they are leaders in that as well.
Thank you. Shane.
Yeah, thanks, Noah. Yeah, just a couple comments. Oh, first of all, Shane Aspel, board president from Beth Israel Synagogue, way up north, Edmonton, Alberta, Canada. We're a modern Orthodox shul of about 160 member units. What we did recently in the past, in 2017, and then again in 2022, we were very fortunate to have my father-in-law's cousin, who just unfortunately passed away 6 weeks ago. He was a playwright. Later in life, he started writing, and he wrote his first play when he was 80, and Truman's Jew, and then his second play, A Girl from Treblinka, just a couple of years ago. And we produced these as plays in the synagogue, and they were really successful, especially The Girl from Treblinka. We were a little bit more organized and advertised further in advance, but we netted 24K with Truman's Jew, and over 60,000 with The Girl from Treblinka. And that was kind of abroad. We focused on the Jewish community, the non-Jewish community, the acting and performing arts community here in Edmonton. And then the question on whether the professional spiritual leadership should be involved in fundraising, I think it's critical. We had a long-term rabbi here, Rabbi Friedman, for about 16 years, and he was a great fundraiser. And essentially, a lot of his fundraising was to pay for his salary. So I think it's important that, the rabbi and the cantor are involved in fundraising.
Marcia asks a good question. Have you ever used your rabbi or your spiritual leader as the guest of honor for a fundraising event? And can anybody speak about the results of it?
Yeah, well, we did in 2018 when Rabbi Friedman left and his wife Batya, I wasn't on the committee, but I think it raised around 80 or 100K. Actually, I think one of my past presidents, Stan Kite.
I know he logged on earlier.
Okay, yeah, if he's still here, he might know.
Absolutely, yeah. So I wasn't past president at least. And we did about 2 or 3 of these gala fundraising dinners where we'd honor some VIP members, and the last one just happened to be when our rabbi was leaving, and they would net in the $70,000, $75,000, $80,000 range. It was a lot of hard work, and we had to work around donor fatigue, potentially other synagogues having their fundraisers, but they do work. And the other thing we have done, I don't know if anyone else mentioned this, is every couple of years have a golf tournament. And if they're properly run, we've netted about also $25,000. And those have worked quite well because it gives people a sense of enjoyment, and you make sure they're well fed and well inebriated on the course, and have a nice dinner and silent auction afterwards. And it's a fun day. It also takes a lot of work. You've got to, get your whole sponsors, your gifts for the silent auction, and players. You got to have players. And golfing's a popular sport. And not price yourself out of the market. That's what I found important. Because donor fatigue is the worst thing when you've got a limited pool of donors. So you've got to just know how to work around that. And that's helped us, over a number of years.
Temple Beth Am of Menneson, Pennsylvania, for many years had a fundraising appeal for former members. They were very successful in keeping a list of who moved away, and every year they got between $6,000 and $10,000 just by appealing to them. Any of you on the Zoom today have that do that for your former members that you can share with us? Judy, you're nodding your head. Does Piqua do that? Oh, you want to unmute?
Yes, probably at your suggestion, I think. Eileen has sent a legacy letter every year. I cannot tell you how much it brings in because I don't have a budget with me. I'm not the president. I'm filling in tonight. But yes, the legacy letter has been helpful. And yeah, we did that.
Great. Does anybody have, thank you, Judy. Does anybody have any other things that you're doing in your own synagogue that you want to share with the group for fundraising? Richard, unmute.
Yeah, y'all were talking about community, and I don't know if I'm going to brag or what I'm going to do about my community, but our fundraiser is a daily luncheon every year, and we net about $15,000 or maybe a little more. On that, we get corned beef from Chicago, which you're all in cities. We're here in the deep South in a small town, and we sell 1,640 sandwiches, corned beef sandwiches, to the community. It takes about 50 people to put this on, and of the 50 people, probably 60% of those are not even Jewish. So we're relying on people to make the sandwiches, sell the sandwiches, buy the sandwiches, and everything else. So it is a complete community involvement here. But we do that for other churches as well. We're involved in everything they do. Again, this is a town of 30,000. We have limited resources. So our corned beef comes out of, I'll give Manny's Deli a little plug here. Manny's Deli in Chicago, 410 pounds. So it's a great fundraiser. People in the town look forward to it every year. It takes us a while to get prepared for this, but I feel like it's giving something back to our community, and we do raise money for it.
Great, thanks. Ann Berman, Grand Rapids, Michigan. Want to unmute? Yeah.
We do have one fundraiser that brings in, well, last year I think we brought in 11,000 on it. It's a 50-50 raffle ticket, but we only print 500 tickets. But tickets are $100 a piece. Years ago, we've done it for 75 years now. Years ago, you actually got a Cadillac, but now we just call it the Cadillac of raffles. And we just ask each congregant to sell a couple tickets. Some of us sell more than others, but last year we sold 220 some tickets, and it's a 50-50 split. So anybody will buy them, not just the Jewish community. So that's been a consistent one that doesn't take a lot of work.
Great, thank you. Kathy Davis from Great Neck, Long Island.
Yes, good evening. Yes, Temple Isaiah in Great Neck, Long Island, New York. We're in the middle of setting up for a bazaar, which will last 3 days. It takes a lot of work. Last year, we made a lot of money. I don't recall how much, but we made over $12,000 on our bazaar. And we hope to raise at least that this year. People have donated. We asked people to donate silver or gold jewelry that they no longer need or want to donate to the temple. And we have somebody professional who is looking at it and will buy it. And as I say, it's a lot of fun, a lot of hard work, but it's also very rewarding, and it brings in money to the temple.
Thank you. Thank you. Shane, you have your hand up?
Yeah, we're very fortunate in Edmonton. We have an anonymous donor, a very well-to-do individual who, on Yom Kippur, well, it's two factors. He will match any donation up to 36,000, and we've had he's studying to be a medical specialist, but he also has smicha, a really talented rabbi doctor who's a great speaker. So that combination, I don't know if we're gonna do it again a third year in a row. Stan, that might be a little bit much, but we're very fortunate to have that matching donor, and that's been very, very helpful.
Great.
Yeah, so if anybody has some well-to-do folks in their communities membership that might be interested, or even maybe a couple of individuals to do a matching donation, that one time only night of Yom Kippur, Kol Nidre is powerful.
Thank you. Peggy, were you going to say something?
No, he just said Rabbi Doctor, or did I understand you to say Rabbi Doctor?
Yeah, he studied to be a rabbi, was a teacher, and then went back to medical school, got his degree, and now he's working on a fellowship here in Edmonton. So yeah, it's a really cool combination, and a wonderful gentleman and a great speaker. He's not employed as our rabbi. He's a medical student, but he does have deep Torah knowledge, and the combination of the anonymous donor and our Hartley, our Rabbi Doctor, excellent speaker, has been really powerful the last couple of years.
I'm wondering, we have a Rabbi Todd Doctor in Galveston. And I think that's so unusual that we would have two Rabbi Doctors. So that I apologize for interrupting. I was just so curious.
No, that's okay.
Thank you.
Any final question or comment or suggestion?
Oh,
Peggy?
No, I'm about to pop to say this. I am just so excited. I have learned so much today that is beyond belief. As you know, we're just beginning. I've been president, vice president, president ever since 2019, when the synagogue was closing. And we have come up from there. We have, with Carol, we have 1894 Opera House in Galveston, which we have named performers and performances, but also in our synagogue, we have a stage. We have the facilities to have performances. We can invite these people over from the Opera House. When they come to the Opera House, we can have them come to us and perform. Carol, I've gotten that from you. I've gotten also, we serve dinners every Shabbat. We have a very nice dinner. It is not attracting any more people. We still have the very same ones coming. So I'm feeling now to cut that out and have just the lox and bagels. And the other thing, Carol, I got from you is asking for donations every Shabbat. I've pulled off. I've been reluctant to do that because I didn't want a Jew feeling that he had to handle money on Shabbat. But now I'm so excited about this that I intend to say you can put your donation in an envelope. We will give them the envelopes, and you can tell me, all of you, if you feel I'm wrong on doing this, but I feel as long as it's in an envelope, they're not handling the money. And Beth Jacob could certainly use the money. Another thing we're getting ready to do is, of course, we have the mikvah that we want to refurbish that has not been used, I guess, since 1963. And then also we're going to start leasing out our Great Hall, because it's ideal for leasing out for venues such as weddings, receptions, class reunions, anything. So those are the things we anticipate doing. But now with all of your input, I'll come out with ideas that I can go back and implement right now. In fact, I'm planning to have a board meeting immediately and tell them what we have come up with today. I'm just so appreciative, just so appreciative with everybody's input. Thank you.
I think all of our brains are full of new ideas, and I just don't want people to think every time they come into the temple, they're going to be expected to leave some money. I think we have to be careful about that, that stereotype that we're all just after money. So be careful what you wish for. If there are no other questions or comments, I say good night and goodbye.